Hayes had spent 18 hours studying his prey and now understood exactly how to destroy it. The creature that had terrorized Haven Station was about to discover that the galaxy's apex predator had finally met something more dangerous than itself. Hayes moved through the station's corridors with deadly purpose, no longer the hunted, but the hunter ready to turn the tables on an enemy that had never known defeat. The central core, where 800 survivors waited in terrified silence, became the stage for Hayes's final gambit. He had observed the creature's behavior long enough to predict its patterns and psychological responses. The thing was supremely confident in its abilities, but that confidence was based on never encountering prey that could think beyond immediate survival instincts. Hayes began by using the station's communication system to speak directly to the creature in a calm, measured voice that carried none of the fear or panic it expected from human prey. He explained that he understood what it was and why it had been sent to Haven Station. More importantly, he told the thing that its hunt was over and that it was now the one being stalked through the corridors. The creature's response was immediate and violent. It tore through sections of the station, searching for the source of this voice while releasing frustrated roars that echoed through the emergency communication channels. Hayes watched from concealed positions as the thing's careful hunting pattern dissolved into chaotic rage. Its creators had given it the perfect predatory instincts, but had not prepared it for becoming prey. Hayes implemented the next phase of his plan by turning the station itself into a weapon against the creature. Environmental systems were reprogrammed to create atmospheric pressure changes that interfered with its sensory organs. Gravity generators in specific sections were adjusted to create disorienting effects that made movement difficult. Most importantly, the main power grid was modified to create electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the thing's neural pathways. The biological analysis device showed fascinating data about the creature's deteriorating psychological state. Stress hormones that had spiked during successful hunts were now flooding its system in response to being unable to locate or predict its new opponent. The thing that had enjoyed terrorizing humans was experiencing terror for the first time in its existence. Hayes escalated the psychological warfare by playing recordings of the creature's own kills through the station's speakers. The sounds of its victims were mixed with Hayes's calm commentary, explaining each tactical mistake the creature had made during its rampage. He pointed out how its overconfidence had led to sloppy hunting techniques and missed opportunities to finish the hunt efficiently. The creature's behavior became increasingly erratic as it struggled to process inputs that contradicted everything it had been programmed to expect. Hayes observed from the shadows as the thing attacked empty corridors and phantom sounds. Its perfect predatory instincts were being overwhelmed by paranoia and confusion that rendered its advantages meaningless. The turning point came when Hayes realized that the creature's neural adaptation system could be overloaded through deliberate manipulation. He created a series of false patterns using environmental controls and recorded sounds that forced the thing to constantly adjust its hunting strategy. Each adaptation was immediately countered by new variables that kept the creature in a state of perpetual confusion. Hayes watched as the perfect predator began making fundamental errors that no apex hunter should commit. It moved through corridors without checking for ambush points and ignored environmental hazards that could be used against it. Most importantly, it was so focused on finding Hayes that it failed to notice how he was manipulating its position within the station. The final confrontation took place in the main power core, where massive fusion reactors provided energy for Haven Station systems. Hayes had spent hours preparing the chamber with traps and hazards that used the creature's own biology against it. The thing's acid blood would become a weapon in Hayes's hands, rather than a defensive advantage. When the creature finally cornered Hayes in the power core, it seemed to regain some of its earlier confidence. The massive chamber offered nowhere to hide, and the thing's claws could tear through any barrier Hayes might try to use for protection. It approached, slowly savoring what it believed would be the final moments of a hunt that had become far too complicated. Hayes stood calmly in the center of the chamber, making no attempt to flee or hide from the approaching predator. His voice remained steady as he explained to the creature exactly how he intended to defeat it. The thing's confusion was visible as it processed the concept of prey that showed no fear even when cornered by certain death. The battle lasted less than 30 seconds, but it changed the balance of power between human and alien forever. Hayes did not try to outfight the creature since its physical advantages were overwhelming. Instead, he used its own momentum and aggression to manipulate it into position where the traps he had prepared could be activated. The creature's acid blood became its downfall when Hayes triggered an explosion that ruptured several of its major vessels. The corrosive fluid splashed across critical power conduits, creating electrical feedback that overloaded the chamber's containment systems. Massive electromagnetic fields activated automatically, trapping the creature in a cage of pure energy that it could not break or dissolve. But Hayes did not kill the trapped predator. Instead, he did something that shocked both the creature and the watching Galactic Council, whose representatives were monitoring the situation through hidden surveillance systems. Hayes approached the helpless creature with a medical kit and began performing field surgery to remove its primary fang. The crystalline structure that served as both weapon and neural processor was carefully extracted while the creature watched in helpless confusion. Without this critical component, the thing could no longer process multiple prey patterns or maintain its predatory confidence. Hayes explained that he was taking the fang as proof that humanity would not be intimidated by galactic civilization's threats. When the surgery was complete, Hayes deactivated the containment field and stepped back to allow the creature to escape. The thing that had been the galaxy's ultimate predator was now broken and diminished, stumbling through the corridors toward its waiting transport ship. It no longer moved with fluid grace, but with the uncertain steps of something that had lost its purpose and identity. The survivors of Haven Station emerged from their shelters to find their nightmare was over. Hayes stood in the power core holding the creature's fang while explaining to Administrator Morrison that this had been a test from galactic civilization. The aliens had sent their best weapon to teach humanity its place in the cosmic order, but the lesson had backfired spectacularly. The creature's transport ship departed Haven Station without ceremony, carrying news of defeat back to the Galactic Council. Hayes transmitted his own message to Earth describing the encounter and requesting that diplomatic contact be established with the alien species who had authorized the attack. The Fang would serve as evidence that humanity preferred negotiation, but was prepared for any alternative. Admiral Carter received Hayes's report with a mixture of pride and amazement. The Lone Wolf program had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations, proving that human adaptability and ingenuity could triumph over seemingly impossible odds. More importantly, humanity now possessed proof that the galaxy contained potential enemies who viewed them as inferior species to be controlled or eliminated. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to review footage of their champion's defeat and humiliation. They watched in stunned silence as a single human not only survived an encounter with the destroyer of worlds, but turned the hunt around and psychologically destroyed their ultimate weapon. The mercy shown to the defeated creature was somehow more terrifying than any brutal execution could have been. New directives were issued throughout galactic space regarding contact with human colonies and shipping. The species that had seemed like chaotic upstarts was now recognized as something far more dangerous. Humanity had demonstrated that when cornered, they could reveal themselves to be predators, capable of defeating anything the galaxy could throw at them. Hayes returned to Earth carrying the crystalline Fang as a trophy and a warning to any species that might consider humanity easy prey. The galaxy had sent its apex predator to teach humans their place in the cosmic order, but had learned instead that some prey, when properly motivated, could become hunters capable of claiming the predator's own fangs as trophies. Hayes moved through Haven Station's outer corridors like a ghost, studying the aftermath of the creature's rampage. Emergency lighting cast shifting shadows across walls scarred by acid burns and claw marks that told the story of systematic hunting. Bodies of security personnel lay where they had fallen, their weapons scattered uselessly around them. The thing that had done this was thorough and patient, taking time to learn from each encounter. The biological analysis device in Hayes's pack registered trace pheromones and chemical signatures that painted a picture of the creature's emotional state during its kills. High concentrations of stress hormones mixed with what appeared to be pleasure chemicals suggested the thing genuinely enjoyed hunting humans. More importantly, the readings showed spikes of frustration whenever the creature had been temporarily thwarted or confused by unexpected resistance. Hayes followed the trail of destruction through the station's outer rings, noting how the creature had methodically cleared each section before moving inward. The pattern revealed tactical thinking. Beyond simple animal instinct, this thing was intelligent enough to prevent escape routes and force its prey into increasingly confined spaces. Most disturbing was evidence that it had taken time to examine human technology and weapons after each kill. Administrator Morrison's voice echoed through the emergency communication system, reporting that 800 survivors remained barricaded in the central core. The creature had them surrounded, but seemed to be taking its time as if savoring their terror. Hayes realized this was exactly the behavior he had hoped to find. The thing's need to prolong the hunt was a weakness he could exploit. Instead of rushing to rescue the survivors, Hayes did something that contradicted every military instinct. He began hunting the hunter using skills learned during years as a wilderness guide, tracking dangerous predators through Earth's most remote regions. The station's maintenance tunnels and service corridors became his domain as he studied the creature's habits and behavioral patterns. The portable analysis device revealed crucial information about the thing's psychology. Its stress hormones spiked dramatically whenever it lost track of prey or encountered unexpected situations. The creature had been designed as the perfect predator, but its creators had given it an addiction to the chase that could be manipulated. Hayes began formulating a plan that would use the thing's own instincts to destroy it. Hayes spent hours moving through the station's hidden passages, learning the creature's routine. It hunted in predictable cycles, alternating between active stalking and periods of rest, where it seemed to savor the fear of its trapped prey. During rest periods, the thing positioned itself where it could monitor the survivors while planning its next move. These moments of stillness were when it was most vulnerable to psychological manipulation. The first direct contact came when Hayes deliberately triggered a motion sensor in an abandoned section of the station. The creature responded, instantly moving with fluid grace through corridors that should have been too narrow for its massive frame. Hayes watched from a concealed position as the thing searched for the source of the disturbance with obvious excitement at the prospect of new prey. When the creature found nothing, its frustration was visible in the way it slashed at empty air. and released acidic saliva that ate through the deck plating. Hayes noted how the thing's hunting pattern became more erratic when denied immediate gratification. Its need for prey was psychological as much as physical, and that created opportunities for manipulation. Hayes began a campaign of psychological warfare using the station's communication system to create sounds and distractions that led the creature away from the survivors. He played recordings of human voices in empty sections and triggered environmental systems to create the illusion of movement. Each false trail drew the thing further from its primary targets and increased its level of agitation. The creatures. Response revealed intelligence that was both impressive and limited. It could learn from individual encounters and adapt its tactics accordingly, but seemed incapable of recognizing larger patterns. Hayes used this weakness to create increasingly complex scenarios that forced the thing to divide its attention between multiple potential threats. The first face-to-face encounter nearly ended Hayes's mission before it truly began. He had underestimated the creature's speed and found himself cornered in a maintenance shaft with nowhere to retreat. The thing's claws raked across his combat suit, leaving deep gouges that would have been fatal without the armor's protection. Its acid blood splattered the walls around him, eating through metal and plastic with terrifying efficiency. But Hayes noticed something during those terrifying seconds that changed everything. The creature had hesitated when he failed to flee, like its previous victims. Instead of running or begging for mercy, Hayes had calmly drawn his sidearm and fired directly into the thing's face. The plasma bolt barely scratched its armored hide, but the creature's reaction was telling. It had expected fear and panic, not calculated resistance. Hayes escaped through a ventilation shaft while the creature was still processing this unexpected behavior. His combat suit was damaged but functional, and more importantly, he had learned that the thing's greatest strength was also a critical weakness. It had been designed to hunt prey that behaved predictably and became confused when that expectation was violated. The psychological profile Hayes constructed from his observations painted a picture of a weapon that had been created without considering the possibility of facing an opponent who understood predator behavior. The creature was supremely confident in its abilities, but had never encountered prey that could think beyond immediate survival instincts. Its creators had given it physical perfection, but had not prepared it for psychological warfare. Hayes began, implementing tactics that no human military force would consider. He used the station's environmental systems to create temperature fluctuations that interfered with the creature's thermal sensors. Emergency lighting was programmed to strobe in patterns that disrupted its visual tracking, while audio systems played sounds designed to mask his movements through the corridors. The creature's frustration grew with each successful evasion. Hayes watched from concealed positions as the thing destroyed sections of the station in fits of rage when it could not locate him. Its hunting pattern became increasingly erratic and desperate as the psychological pressure mounted. The perfect predator was discovering what it meant to be hunted by something that refused to be predictable. Hayes realized that the creature's neural adaptation system had significant limitations. It could process multiple variables and adjust its tactics accordingly, but seemed to reach a saturation point when faced with too many contradictory inputs. By creating chaos and uncertainty, he could force the thing into a state of confusion that would make it vulnerable. The station's central core, where the survivors waited, became the focal point for Hayes's strategy. He would not try to fight the creature directly, since its physical advantages were too overwhelming. Instead, he would manipulate its psychological state until it made the kind of mistake that apex predators rarely survived. The hunt was about to become a battle of minds rather than claws, and Hayes intended to prove that sometimes intelligence could triumph over instinct. The creature had spent its entire existence at the top of the food chain, never imagining that something might be capable of hunting it in return. Hayes moved through the darkened corridors with growing confidence, knowing that he had found the key to defeating humanity's greatest threat, the thing that had terrified an entire galactic. Council was about to learn that humans could be predators too. The priority distress signal from Haven Station reached Terra Defense Command at 0347 hours Earth Standard Time, cutting through the normal communication traffic like a scream in the darkness. Admiral Lisa Carter was awakened in her quarters by the duty officer who explained that one of humanity's most successful colonies was under attack by an unknown hostile force. The preliminary reports made no sense, and she demanded to see the data immediately. Carter stood in the command center, reviewing footage from Haven Station that defied everything she knew about warfare. The creature hunting through the colony's corridors was unlike anything in Earth's extensive xenobiology databases. Its size and speed were beyond normal biological limits, while its apparent intelligence and tactical awareness suggested something far more dangerous than a wild animal. Most disturbing was how easily it adapted to human weapons and defensive measures. The tactical analysis was grim. Haven Station's security forces were well-trained and properly equipped, but they were being systematically eliminated by a single opponent. Standard military doctrine called for deploying a full battle group to deal with threats of this magnitude, but the nearest fleet elements were 6 days away at best. By then, Haven Station would be a tomb floating in space around Proxima Centauri. Carter had spent 30 years in military service, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion into space. She had commanded fleets against pirate confederations and negotiated ceasefires with alien species that most humans had never heard of. Her experience told her that conventional military responses would fail against whatever was hunting through Haven Station, just as they had failed against the colony's security forces. The Admiral accessed her highest clearance files and reviewed options that existed outside normal military channels. Deep in the classified archives lay records of experimental programs designed to handle impossible scenarios that regular forces could not address. Most had been discontinued due to ethical concerns or practical limitations, but one remained active under special authorization from the highest levels of Earth government. The Lone Wolf program had been created 5 years earlier in response to growing concerns about humanity's expansion into hostile territory. Traditional military units were designed for conventional warfare against opponents who followed predictable patterns and used familiar tactics. The program trained individuals to operate alone against threats that defied normal military doctrine, using psychological warfare and unconventional methods. Only 12 candidates had ever been accepted into the program, and only one had completed the full training cycle. Danny Hayes had volunteered after losing his wife and daughter in a terrorist attack on Luna Station. His background as a wilderness survival expert combined with psychological conditioning and enhanced reflexes made him uniquely qualified for missions that no sane person would accept. Carter reviewed Hayes's file with growing certainty that he represented Haven Station's only hope. His psychological profile showed unusual stability under extreme stress and an almost supernatural ability to understand predator behavior. Military evaluations praised his tactical thinking and adaptability while noting his tendency to approach problems from unexpected angles. Most importantly, he had never failed a mission no matter how impossible it seemed. The Admiral authorized Hayes's deployment with full operational discretion and unlimited resource access. The mission parameters were simple. Reach Haven Station and eliminate the threat by any means necessary. Success was not expected, but Hayes represented the best chance 50,000 colonists had for survival. The alternative was to write off the entire colony as a loss and hope the creature died with them. Hayes received the mission briefing in his quarters at the Lone Wolf training facility on Mars. The isolated compound housed the program's research, laboratories, and psychological conditioning chambers where candidates learned to operate beyond normal human limitations. His living space was Spartan by choice, containing only essential items and photographs of the family he had lost 5 years earlier. The mission details were transmitted through encrypted channels that required biometric confirmation and psychological evaluation to access. Hayes studied the footage from Haven Station with professional detachment, noting details that military analysts had missed. The creature's behavior suggested overconfidence and a tendency to play with its prey rather than simply killing efficiently. Those traits could be exploited by someone who understood predator psychology. Hayes requested minimal equipment for the mission, including a basic combat suit, standard plasma sidearm, and essential survival gear. His philosophy was that complex equipment created dependencies that could be exploited by adaptive opponents. The research division added one item to his loadout: a portable biological analysis device that could study stress responses and behavioral patterns in real time. The journey to Proxima Centauri aboard the fast courier ship Mercury gave Hayes 8 hours to study everything known about the threat. Computer analysis of the creature's movements revealed hunting patterns that seemed almost ritualistic. It was not simply killing humans, but appeared to be studying them and learning from each encounter. The thing seemed to enjoy the chase more than the actual kill. Hayes recognized behavioral markers he had seen in Earth's apex predators during his years as a wilderness guide. The creature was displaying dominance behaviors and territorial marking. That suggested high intelligence combined with predatory instincts. Most importantly, it seemed to expect its prey to behave in predictable ways and became confused when that expectation was violated. The biological analysis fascinated Hayes more than the tactical implications. According to the limited data available, the creature's stress hormones spiked whenever it lost contact with prey, suggesting an almost addictive relationship with hunting. Its neural activity showed patterns consistent with boredom when kills became too easy. The thing needed the challenge of pursuit to maintain psychological stability. Hayes began formulating an approach that no military manual would recommend. Instead of trying to overpower the creature or outrun it, he would use its own instincts against it. The key was understanding that this thing had been designed as the ultimate predator, but had probably never encountered prey that fought back. Using psychological warfare, its creators had given it physical superiority, but had not prepared it for an opponent who understood how predators think. The courier ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, where Haven Station hung like a wounded animal in the red glow of its parent star. Long-range scans showed minimal life signs within the colony, while the alien vessel remained in position outside the defensive perimeter. Whatever was happening aboard the station was nearly finished, and Hayes knew he was probably too late to save most of the colonists. Hayes transferred to a stealth shuttle for the final approach to Haven Station. The small craft used advanced cloaking technology to avoid detection by both human sensors and whatever systems the alien ship might be using. His plan required getting aboard the station without alerting the creature to his presence so he could study its behavior and find weaknesses to exploit. As the shuttle approached the station's docking bay, Hayes felt the familiar calm that settled over him before dangerous missions. His training had taught him to channel fear and anger into focused determination. The creature hunting through Haven Station was about to encounter something it had never faced before. A human who understood that sometimes the best way to fight a predator was to become one. The docking bay doors opened to reveal corridors darkened by emergency lighting and stained with evidence of the creature's rampage. Hayes checked his equipment one final time and stepped into the station ready to begin the most important hunt of his life. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, 50,000 lives depended on his ability to turn humanity's greatest weakness into its greatest strength. Haven Station hung in the red glow of Proxima Centauri like a jewel against the darkness of space. The massive structure rotated slowly to provide artificial gravity for its 50,000 residents who had made this distant world their home. Gardens filled with earth plants covered the outer rings, while the inner core housed manufacturing facilities and research laboratories. It was humanity's greatest achievement in space colonization, and Jake Morrison felt proud every time he looked out at the thriving community he helped build. Morrison stood in the Central Command Center, reviewing the morning reports from department heads across the station. Agricultural yields were up 15% from last quarter, and the new fusion reactors were operating at peak efficiency. The research teams had made breakthrough discoveries in mineral extraction that would benefit Earth colonies throughout the sector. Most importantly, the colonists were happy and healthy with crime rates near zero and a birth rate that promised continued growth for generations. The administrator had been a military engineer before accepting the position at Haven Station, and his experience designing defensive systems had proven valuable during construction. The station's shields could deflect asteroid impacts and cosmic radiation, while automated defense turrets protected against potential pirate attacks. The colonists felt safe under his leadership, and Morrison took that responsibility seriously. Captain Amy Brooks entered the command center with her usual brisk efficiency. As head of station security, she maintained a small but well-trained force of peacekeepers who handled everything from domestic disputes to emergency rescues. Brooks had served in the Colonial Defense Forces before joining the civilian population, and her tactical expertise complemented Morrison's engineering background perfectly. Together, they had created a security protocol that kept Haven Station running smoothly. The morning briefing was interrupted when sensor operator Kevin Park called out from his station with unusual excitement in his voice. Long-range scanners had detected an unknown vessel approaching the system at incredible speed. The ship's configuration didn't match any known human or alien design in their databases, and it was ignoring all attempts at communication. Most concerning was its trajectory, which would bring it directly to Haven Station. Morrison ordered the station to yellow alert while Brooks activated security protocols. Emergency announcements echoed through the corridors, instructing residents to remain calm. While security personnel took their positions, the unknown ship continued its approach without responding to hail attempts or identifying itself according to standard space traffic procedures. As the vessel drew closer, detailed scans revealed its alien construction. The hull was composed of some unknown material that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. Strange protrusions along its length pulsed with internal light and sensor arrays that defied human understanding. Most disturbing was the way it moved with a predatory grace that reminded Morrison of sharks he had seen in Earth's oceans. The alien ship took up position just outside the station's defensive perimeter and remained motionless for several minutes. Long-range sensors detected power fluctuations within the vessel, but could not determine its intentions. Morrison tried every diplomatic protocol in the manual, from formal greetings to universal mathematical sequences, but received no response. The ship seemed to be studying Haven Station like a predator examining its prey. Without warning, the vessel launched a single pod toward the station. The projectile moved too fast for defensive systems to intercept and struck the outer hull with tremendous force. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically to prevent atmospheric loss, while damage control teams rushed to assess the breach. Morrison watched helplessly as hull sensors went dark in an expanding pattern around the impact site. Brooks coordinated the security response from the command center while her teams moved to investigate the breach. The first squad to reach the impact zone found a hole torn through 3 layers of reinforced plating with edges that looked almost like bite marks. The pod itself had somehow dissolved, leaving behind only traces of unknown organic compounds that the station's sensors couldn't identify. Security Team Alpha, led by Sergeant Pete Collins, advanced cautiously through the damaged corridors with weapons ready and full environmental suits activated. Collins was a veteran of border conflicts who had faced pirates and raiders, but nothing had prepared him for what emerged from the shadows ahead. The creature that attacked his team was a nightmare given physical form, 12 feet tall and covered. In black armor-like skin, the thing moved with impossible speed and grace. Its claws were longer than human hands and sharp enough to slice through Collins's plasma rifle like paper. Acid dripped from wounds in its hide, eating through the deck plating wherever it touched. Most terrifying were its eyes, which glowed with predatory intelligence as it studied each human it encountered. Collins managed to fire 3 shots before the creature closed the distance between them. His plasma bolts struck the thing's chest, but seemed to cause minimal damage. The monster's claws raked across his armor, leaving deep gouges that would have killed him if not for the reinforced plating. His team scattered as the creature focused, its attention on the sergeant who had shown the most resistance. The thing didn't just kill Collins quickly. It seemed to be learning from the encounter, studying how his weapon worked and testing the strength of his armor. When other security teams arrived, they found Collins' body, but the creature had vanished into the station's maintenance tunnels. Acid burns marked its path through the ventilation system like a trail of destruction. Morrison declared a station-wide emergency and ordered all civilians to evacuate to the central core where the heaviest protective barriers could keep them safe. Emergency blast doors sealed section by section as security teams tried to track the creature's movement through the station. Every time they thought they had it cornered, the thing would disappear into another maintenance shaft or service tunnel. Brooks coordinated the defense from multiple security stations, but quickly realized their standard weapons were inadequate. Plasma rifles had minimal effect, and projectile weapons couldn't penetrate the creature's natural armor. Worse yet, the thing seemed to be learning from each encounter, becoming more efficient at avoiding their tactics and exploiting weaknesses in their formation. The creature killed methodically, working its way through the station's outer rings toward the populated areas. Security personnel tried to slow its advance, but their casualties mounted steadily. Each engagement taught the monster something new about human weapons and tactics, while revealing nothing about how to stop it. The thing seemed to enjoy the hunt, growing more confident with each kill. Dr. Lisa Martinez in the medical center treated the wounded and tried to analyze tissue samples from the creature's victims. The acid burns showed a chemical composition, unlike anything in Earth's databases, while claw marks revealed surgical precision that suggested intelligence rather than mindless savagery. Whatever this thing was, it had been designed specifically for killing, and it was very good at its job. As the hours passed, Morrison realized that conventional security measures would not be enough to save Haven Station. The creature was systematically eliminating his people while moving steadily toward the civilian shelters. Standard evacuation procedures were impossible with the thing hunting through the corridors and their defensive systems had proven useless against its capabilities. In desperation, Morrison sent a priority message to Earth requesting immediate military assistance. The transmission included video footage of the creature and detailed analysis of its capabilities, along with casualty reports that grew worse by the hour. Haven Station had become a hunting ground for something that had never been seen before, and 50,000 lives hung in the balance. The alien ship remained motionless outside the station's perimeter, as if waiting for its weapon to complete its mission. Morrison stared out at the vessel through the command center's viewports and wondered what kind of species would create such a monster. More importantly, he wondered if help would arrive in time to save anyone, or if they would all become victims of humanity's first encounter with galactic civilization's ultimate predator. The crystal towers of Kepler 442c gleamed under the light of twin suns as 7 ancient species gathered in the Great Council Chamber. Each race had ruled their corner of the galaxy for thousands of years, and together they maintained the delicate balance that kept peace among the stars. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, with walls that shifted color based on the emotional state of its occupants. And today those walls pulsed with deep red anger and golden anxiety. Speaker Vexathari of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center podium, her crystalline form catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the assembled delegates. The Zephyrians had been the first to achieve interstellar travel and considered themselves the natural leaders of galactic civilization. Her voice rang out clear and sharp like wind chimes in a storm as she addressed the council. The humans had become a problem, and everyone in the chamber knew it. For 3 standard galactic cycles, the newcomers from the 3rd planet of a small yellow star had been expanding through space at an alarming rate. They built colonies on worlds that other species had marked for future settlement and their trade. Ships appeared in systems where they had no business being. Most concerning of all, they seemed completely unaware of or unconcerned with the established order that had kept the galaxy stable for millennia. Ambassador Thekvar of the mighty Veltaran. Hegemony shifted his massive bulk in his specialized chair. The Veltarans were warriors by nature with thick armored hides and 4 powerful arms. But even they had learned to respect the ancient treaties and boundaries. He spoke in a voice like grinding stone about the human mining operation that had appeared near the sacred burial grounds of his ancestors. The humans had been warned twice to leave, but their response had been to send more ships and expand their operations. The Quindari representative floated in her containment sphere filled with the methane atmosphere her species required. She communicated through bioluminescent patterns that the translation matrix converted to audible speech. Her people were traders and information brokers who valued stability above all else. The human expansion was disrupting carefully established trade routes and creating chaos in markets that had operated smoothly for generations. Each species presented their grievances against the humans. The Nexari complained about unauthorized research stations in their territory. The Corwill protested human agricultural ships that were contaminating pristine worlds with their Earth-based crops. The Rylock delegation reported that human explorers had ignored quarantine protocols around dangerous stellar phenomena. Even the peaceful harmonists who rarely spoke in council meetings expressed concern about human religious missionaries attempting to convert their youth to strange new beliefs. Vexthari listened to each complaint with growing frustration. The humans had been contacted 3 times through official diplomatic channels, and each time they had acknowledged the messages but taken no corrective action. Their representatives claimed they were simply exercising their right to explore and settle as a spacefaring species. They seemed genuinely confused by the concept that there were established rules and boundaries they needed to respect. The problem was not just human expansion, but the way they expanded. Other species had predictable patterns of growth that could be managed and negotiated. The humans were chaotic and seemed to make decisions based on individual initiative rather than central planning. A human colony ship might appear in a system, one day with no advance warning or diplomatic contact. Their explorers took risks that no sane species would consider, and somehow survived disasters that should have destroyed them. Korath Prime, speaker for the ancient Axiom Collective, spoke last. His people were the eldest of the galactic community, and their words carried tremendous weight. He explained that the humans represented something the galaxy had never encountered before, a species that had achieved spaceflight without first learning to cooperate with established galactic civilization. Every other race had been contacted and guided during their early development, but the humans had been overlooked because their planet seemed unlikely to produce advanced life. The debate continued for hours, with each species offering their perspective on how to handle the human problem. Some suggested economic sanctions or trade blockades, but human colonies seemed remarkably self-sufficient. Others proposed military intervention, but the humans had already demonstrated unexpected combat capabilities in several border skirmishes. The diplomatic approach had clearly failed, since the humans either could not or would not understand the gravity of their violations. Finally, Vexathari called for silence and presented the Council's final option. Deep in the restricted vaults of the ancient weapons storage facility on the dead world of Mortis Prime lay something that had not been awakened for over 2,000 years. The Krillian apex hunter known as Destroyer of Worlds had been created during the last great galactic war by bioengineers who had long since been extinct. It was the ultimate predator designed to hunt and kill any species that threatened galactic stability. The creature was 12 feet of living nightmare with black chitin armor and razor-sharp claws that could cut through starship hulls. Its acid blood could dissolve almost any material, and its adaptive neural network allowed it to learn and counter any defense within minutes of encountering it. Most terrifying of all, it seemed to enjoy the hunt and would pursue its prey with relentless intelligence until the target was eliminated. The hunter had been used only 7 times in galactic history, and each time it had succeeded perfectly. An entire rebel fleet had been destroyed when the creature infiltrated their flagship and killed every crew member. A rogue AI that had taken control of 3 star systems had been eliminated when the hunter adapted to digital warfare and literally consumed the computer networks from within. No target had ever survived an encounter with the Destroyer of Worlds. The Council voted unanimously to deploy the hunter against humanity as a demonstration of what would happen to species that refused to respect galactic law. The target would be Haven Station on Proxima Centauri B, the newest and most successful human colony. It housed 50,000 settlers and represented everything the humans were most proud of in their expansion efforts. The destruction of Haven Station would send a clear message that cooperation was not optional. Preparations began immediately for the hunter's awakening and deployment. The ancient containment systems on Mortis Prime were activated, and the creature was prepared for transport to human space. Special authorization codes were transmitted to unlock the bioweapon's full capabilities, and targeting parameters were set for maximum psychological impact. As the council session ended and the delegates departed for their home systems, Vexathari remained in the chamber watching the wall colors slowly fade from angry red to cold blue. She felt no joy in the decision, but believed it was necessary for the greater good of galactic civilization. The humans would learn their place in the established order, or they would serve as an example to other species who might consider challenging the ancient balance of power. In the depths of space, a transport vessel departed Mortis Prime, carrying the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever created toward an unsuspecting human colony where 50,000 people went about their daily lives unaware that death itself was coming for them.